Jai Hind, Namaste, hello and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav and in this video we'll be discussing selected topics from the Hindu and Indian Express for the date 29th of September, right? So in this video we'll be discussing the following topics. Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020. So the new Defense Acquisition Procedure would be implemented from the 1st of October, right? So we will see all the major features of this procedure, what all it changes, what new categories it introduces, what about the offset clause, what about the Indian specifications or Indian content, how does it deal with defining the Indian vendor, all of that, so much more to know. So we'll look into this in detail. Then promoting women in science. So basically government is bringing out the new policy on science and technology, right? The last policy came in 2013. So in 2020, they are bringing out a new policy. And one of the major goals of that policy is to promote women in science. Now it aims to do that through a series of steps. One of those steps includes ranking institutions in terms of participation of women, and they have a procedure as to how to go about it. So we'll look at that. We'll also get to know the present state of women in science in India and what all policy initiatives the government is undertaking to increase their participation in science. Then Apple vendors to invest in India. Important news. 3 of the major vendors of Apple, including Foxconn, are collectively looking to make an investment of 900 million over the next 5 years in India. And they are basically going to invest under the PLI scheme. So I will tell you what is PLI scheme, and I will also tell you how this investment is both symbolically important for the Indian economy and also it has an aspect towards the cyber security or security of your devices. Then tobacco usage and control in India. So basically Maharashtra government has banned the loose selling of cigarettes and BDs. So it is a small news, but through this we will cover a very big topic about tobacco usage. So I will be telling you what is the present stage of tobacco usage in India, what is the average monthly expenditure on tobacco usage, what is the status of loose consumption of tobacco. Then I will also tell you whether the bans are really effective or not. Then we'll look at the policy interventions, we'll look at the WHO, FCTC, then we'll look at the COTPA, right? COTPA 2003 and the amendment in 2020, right? We'll look at all of that. So in this article, we'll be covering so many topics about tobacco usage in India. Then ESG funds. Basically, ESG funds are becoming very, very famous these days. So we'll look at these funds. And why am I covering that? Because UPSC has a tendency of asking such questions. For example, they asked about masala bonds. So there's a possibility they could be asking about them as well. So interesting concept. It is about clean funding. So we'll just discuss these funds. Then Bharati Script. Now Bharati Script is going to be a very good initiative. It is basically developed by a team of IIT Madras and it proposes to be a script which can cater to all the major languages in India. So we'll see how this script works. It basically works on a technology called transliteration. So how it works, what are the implications, we'll discuss everything. So these are all the topics that we are going to discuss in this video. Now let's get started. Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020. So finally this policy is going to be implemented from 1st of October, right? Now just 2 days back, we did an article where CAG had basically censured the government and it had said that over the past 10 years or so, the offset clause has not been implemented in full spirit, right? Because critical technologies or investments were not done in India as per mandated by the offset clause. So this defense acquisition procedure also addresses that lacune. Now it has several major features. I will be telling you about all of them. First of all, this focuses on 3 key areas which are Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India and ease of doing business. Now it has many features. I have just written them down here and then I will be explaining them. For example, it talks about boosting Make in India. Then it gives a very clear definition of measuring indigenous content, which has been a bone of contention in the past. Then there are changes in the Make procedure. Now there are categories Make 1 and Make 2, and now they have introduced a new Make 3. Now basically under Make procedure, the Government of India or the Ministry of Defense, it basically pays the defense vendors to develop technology in India. So we'll see what these changes are, right? Then it clearly defines what is an Indian vendor, which is very, very important. Then it produces new offset categories, like I said, after the CAG report. So basically, intergovernmental contracts, government to government contracts, and contract from a single vendor. Such contracts would be out of the purview of offset category. Now, what is offset? This policy was introduced in 2005, and it said that for any defense project that is above 300 crore, 30% of that would have to be invested in local indigenous defense industries in India, right? Then later on, the limits were raised to 2000 crore rupees. And now for three categories, these offset categories or these offset conditions have been totally abandoned. Okay. Then for the first time, it introduces the concept of leasing of defense equipment. So basically we can lease defense equipment rather than waiting for years and years to the end to basically get equipment. And then there are many costs. For example, we did a news few days back where we were basically trying to upgrade Mi-17 medium lift heavy helicopters. You remember? And CAG had said that the rupees 223 crore upgrade that was going to take place for the 58 Mi-70 helicopters, that was useless because that upgrade would be operational from 2022, and those helicopters, they have a life till 2024, and the process was initiated in sometimes 2007, right? So this is the major problem in defense deals. So leasing would also help us solve such problems because we'll just lease ready-made platforms, use them and then return them. Then it also has the clauses for handling price variations. Now what happens, for example, in 2020, you make a deal worth 20,000 crore, right? Now it takes time for that deal to come through, and finally you start receiving the deliveries in 2030, let's say. Now in these 10 years, there would be many time and cost escalations, and they are basically borne by you. So to handle such things, they have introduced this principle of handling price variations. Then it also has made specific provisions for boosting indigenous content. So this is the overall broad framework of the defense acquisition procedure. Now just let us look it into detail. The new policy for procurement of defense equipment, titled Defense Acquisition Procedure, will come into effect from October 1. Three key areas are Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, and Ease of Doing Business. Now the procedure has 5 new chapters, including leasing, acquisition from DRDO, and post-contractual management. All of these things are very, very important. So let us look at the key features. So number 1 is boost to Make in India. It introduced a significant new procurement category called Buy Global Manufacture in India. Now this stipulates indigenization of at least 50% of the overall contract value of a foreign purchase. So if a tender is flouted and if a purchase is made under this category, then at least 50% of that overall contract value would have to be pumped back into Indian industries, right? This category also encourages vendors to set up facilities in India to manufacture spares and assemblies for the basic equipment and to set up maintenance, repair and overhaul facilities. So this MRO facilities, they also have a very, very big scope in India. India is trying to set up hub of MRO facilities for both defense equipment and also for civil aviation. So through policies, we are trying to promote these MRO facilities. In most acquisition categories, DAP 2020 stipulates 10% higher indigenization than DPP 2016. And I will just show you in some time what are those things, okay? Now it gives a clear definition of measuring indigenous content. DAP 2020 has instituted a simple benchmark. Indigenous content will now be calculated on base contract price, that is the total contract price, less taxes and duties. So whatever the contract price was, only that price without any taxes and duties, that will be taken into consideration for basically marking or measuring the indigenous content. So it is a good thing. Then changes in make procedure. Under this, MOD reimburses Indian vendors a percentage of the cost they incur to developing equipment. I told you in the introduction. Now there were 2 make procedures or make categories available. Now they have introduced a third one as well. And even in the earlier two ones, there have been some changes. So let us look at them. The Make One procedure now incorporates a limit per vendor of rupees 250 crore and reimburses only 70% of the development cost. Earlier under 2016 policy, they used to reimburse 90%, but now only 70%. Under Make 2 procedure, defense companies themselves fund the development of equipment to offer the military. So here they will take all the risks, but they would get some contract in return. DAP 2020 incorporates a new Make 3 procedure in which indigenous firms manufacture equipment, platforms or spares for import substitution. So in Make 3, the major focus is on import substitution. So these two, Make 1 and Make 2, are about developing new technology within India, and Make 3 basically focuses on import substitution. So you should remember this distinction. Now it also defines Indian vendor. Indian vendor as the company that is owned and controlled by resident Indian citizen. So number one, resident Indian citizen with FDI not more than 49%. So very clear definition that a resident Indian citizen, that means he should be living in India and FDI should not exceed more than 49%. In defense sector, recently the limit for FDI was raised to 74%. But for an Indian vendor, the FDI should not be more than 49%. Then there are changes in the offset policy. I already told you that the offset policy was introduced in 2005 when for projects worth more than 300 crore, they had to invest 30% back in indigenous defense industries in India. Then later on in 2016 or 17, it was raised to 2000 crore. Still 30% of the value had to be invested back. If you remember, we also discussed the offset during the Rafale report that was produced by the CAG. I told you in the introduction as well that CAG said that not only Rafale but other deals as well for the past decade, there haven't been many offset commitments fulfilled. So CAG raised the red flag over that. So basically now they have excluded some categories from offset policy altogether. It will not be applicable to inter-government agreements, government to government and single vendor. And basically they would be promoting a single vendor to produce everything, because if there are multiple vendors then there are multiple problems, and those vendors also have to synchronize, and then with the government demands they have to synchronize. So they basically want to promote a single vendor to provide everything for a platform. Various multipliers have been added to give incentivization in discharge of offset. Now there is a multiplier thing that has been introduced. It is somewhat technical, not very important for your exam, just for your general knowledge. So the multiplier value for offset transaction to earn offset credits will be focused towards technology transfer. So major focus is on technology transfer, with transfer of technology for critical technology with a 4 into multiplier. That is whatever the multiplier is. So 4 times the credits you will get for critical technology. Then 3 times for transfer of technology to DRDO. It may not be a critical technology, ordnance factories or defense POs, and only 0.5 for components. So basically 4 into multiplier for critical transfer of technology or transfer of critical technology, 3 into multiplier for transfer of technology to DRDO, ordnance factories or defense POs, and just 0.5 or half into multiplier for components. So basically it clearly favors the transfer of critical technology. Now leasing introduced as new category. Please forgive this mistake. Leasing or asset acquisition for a limited period finds a dedicated chapter in the procurement policy for the first time. And I already told you the logic behind it, that we don't have to wait for years and years, and we can get ready-made platforms, we can use them and then we can return them. And it will be very easy for us to basically fortify our defense equipment, right? Because we won't have to wait for years and years to basically the contract to come through and to take deliveries. So this is a good step. Allowing the government to hire equipment from either domestic or foreign vendors. It will also help the government in terms of finances, because we don't have to put in so much of capital cost for buying an asset. We can just lease it and return it. It handles price variations. DAP 2020 will also cater to price variation in long-term projects into requests for proposals for projects worth more than 300 crore with a duration of over 3 years. So any proposal for a project which is over 3 years and its value exceeds 300 crore, then there will also be some mechanism for handling the long-term variations in prices. Now, role of DRDO and defense PSUs, it gives them a special role. It has a dedicated chapter to buy weapons and platforms designed by DRDO, ordnance factories and defense PSUs. So basically this policy is also promoting Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? And we also saw in terms of multiplier effect of offset, 3 into multiplier would be given for transfer of technology to these 3, right? So they are finding importance under this policy. Now there is also a chapter that looks at procuring software, because software is becoming very, very critical for defense platforms. For example, if you're flying a fighter jet, then it has a very sophisticated flight suit which runs on a particular software. Then your missiles, everything is being controlled by software these days. So procuring software is also very, very critical. The chapter on information communication technology will look at peculiar issues related to procurement of ICT intensive equipment, especially of interoperability and built upgradability. Now this is important, interoperability and built upgradability, because we are signing many agreements with different armies and navies. So they are operating on different platforms. For example, we signed recently with Japan, right? And we have also signed with USA. So they are basically working on some different platforms. We are working on different platforms. So to enhance interoperability, we'll have built-in procedures and we'll have equipment especially which can deal with it, right? Enhance security requirements and change management. Now overall enhancement in indigenous content. So you can take a screenshot. Basically these were the categories that were introduced in DPP 2016. So for make Indian IDMM, earlier it was only 40%, minimum 40, now 50. So what is basically happening, that in each category at least 10% is being increased in terms of indigenous content as compared to DPP 2016. Now this, what is this buy Indian, buy IDDM, make and buy? We will discuss in some other video, because if we start discussing it, then it will be a very, very huge video. And let's be assured there would be many, many articles and news about this policy, especially, you know, the Hindu and Indian Express, they would be running some basically agenda and they would be criticizing the government left, right and center. So we will be getting many, many articles about this in the coming days. So don't worry. So please take a screenshot of this. Now there are also provisions for services qualitative requirement, which defines the capability sought for any equipment, weapon or platform, will now include a comparative analysis for products available within the country and internationally and making them more realistic. For example, you want to procure a gun, right? And the alternatives are AK-47, INSAS and 2-3 more. Now you will basically, before placing an order, you will make a detailed comparison of the products available both domestically and internationally in terms of their functionality, in terms of your needs and requirements, and in terms of the finances that you have to dispose. And then you will come at a decision. So again, it introduced a detailed investigative approach into placing orders. The government has also tried to rationalize the trial and testing procedures. With the new measures, the government hopes to bring down the defense procurement timelines. So basically what happens now, you order something. Now, for example, you flout a tender, right? For a gun. Now, let's say there are 10 companies who have basically placed their bids for the tender. Now you shortlist 2 or 3 vendors. Now you will go and basically test their equipment, right? So this process takes very, very long time. So there are inbuilt procedures or mechanisms within this policy to rationalize this whole process so that the time for such an acquisition becomes much, much less. The long-term integrated prospective plan has now been redesigned as integrated capacity development plan and will cover a period of 10 years. Now this point is not important for you, so I'm just leaving it. So this is all about the defense procurement policy, right? Now again, I'm telling you, we will be discussing this policy time and again in 3-4 videos, because I'm sure that there would be articles about it in so many newspapers. So we'll come back to it again. Major takeaways are, first of all, offset clause, changes in offset clause, right? Then It clearly defines Indian vendor. Yes, it defines clearly how to measure the indigenous content. Yes, then it raises the Indian component in every project as compared to DPP 2016 at least by 10%. Yes, what else was there? Then leasing was also introduced. Yes, so these are some of the basic or the broad frameworks that have been introduced in the DPP 2020. Tobacco usage and control in India. Now basically for the past 2 days there haven't been much news in the papers worth mentioning. So this was a very small news in Indian Express, but it gave us a chance to understand this tobacco issue in India. Now the news was that the Maharashtra government has banned the sale of loose cigarettes and BDs to basically control the consumption of tobacco, and this ban was imposed under COPTA or the Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act 2003. Now in this article we'll be discussing many issues like what is the pattern of use of tobacco in India, what is the average monthly expenditure of a tobacco user in India. Then we'll also see the status of loose buyers who basically buy the loose cigarettes. Then we'll see how effective these bans really are. Then we'll also look at the control regime of tobacco products in India. We'll see FCTC, which is a treaty that we signed under the WHO, right? Then we'll look at the main features of COTPA 2003. Then there was an amendment in 2020 which deals with packaging and labeling. So we'll also look at that. So these are all the things that we'll be discussing. Now let us begin. So like I said, Maharashtra government has banned the sales of loose cigarettes and BDs to reduce consumption of tobacco and to comply with the COTPA 2003. Now other states that have done so are Chhattisgarh. It has also banned the sale of loose cigarettes in 2020, right? Now the government's aim is to make sure that the users are able to see the mandated warnings on cigarette packaging. Now what really happens? If you are a consumer, unfortunately, if you are, then please stop. It is not about some ethics or morals. It's just about your health, and you're really playing with your health. And the second-hand smoke is also a very big problem. So please take care of your health and don't subject yourself and your family to the later dire consequences that you are going to face. So please stop this habit. Anyways, getting back to it, the whole cigarette package has been made very unattractive. Those images are very graphic, right? And they leave an impression on your mind. But if you are buying a loose cigarette, then you are not buying the packet, then you're not seeing the warnings, because the labeling rules say that 85% of the area has to have pictures and pictorial warnings and everything. But when you're buying loose cigarettes, you basically beat the whole purpose, right? So that is why they are trying to ban the sale of loose cigarettes and BDs. Now under COTPA, tobacco products need to be sold with graphic health warning on their packaging, and loose cigarettes do not comply with this rule. Now section 7 of the act mentions no person shall directly or indirectly produce, supply or distribute cigarettes or any other tobacco products unless every package of cigarettes or any other tobacco products produced, supplied or distributed by him bears thereupon or in its label. So basically it's saying that you cannot sell less than 6 cigarettes as loose cigarettes, right? And when you're buying 6 or more, then you have to get the packaging with it, right? So this is what this is basically saying. Now the act also mentions that the warning should be specified on not less than one of the largest panels of the packet. India has one of the highest panel coverage in terms of area on the packet, which is up to 85%, in which the cigarettes or any other tobacco products have been packed for distribution, sale and supply. Now basically what happens if you are a smoker, most of the people get into smoking out of a charm. If you remember the movies in the 90s or early 2000s and up till recently, now whenever you go to watch a movie, there's a big message at the beginning of the movie about the ill consequences or the dire consequences of consuming tobacco products. But earlier, smoking cigarettes was basically portrayed as being something very cool, very classy, right? And it was also connected to machoism, and the packaging also used to be very, very attractive. I remember as a kid, my grandfather used to consume, and he used to bring packages of Gold Flake and Charmis, and those packets, they actually looked very, very attractive. So that is one of the ways to induce you into picking up this habit, right? So many countries, in order to avoid this or to dissuade people from using this, first they started with ordinary packaging and then they started with pictorial graphics, right? Now, why not mandatorily ban? Now, this is not possible in a democracy. It can happen in a theological state. Like Islamic states, many states, they have banned consumption of cigarettes and alcohol, but it cannot happen in a democracy like ours. And secondly, these global tobacco players, especially Philip Morrison, they have a very large lobby and they are very influential. So it is very difficult to totally ban it. Then there would be issues like right to choice, freedom of expression and whatnot. So government cannot go for blanket ban. All it can do is to basically dissuade as many people as possible from getting onto this habit, right? Now, the pattern of tobacco use in India. According to Global Adult Tobacco Survey GATS 2016-17, which was a household survey conducted on over 74,000 people aged 15 years or more, over 91% of current smokers in the country believe that smoking causes serious illness. And it is true. Many people that I know and who are into smoking, they know that it causes many problems, but they really can't give it up because it is highly addictive. Smoke tobacco. 10.7% of all adults, 99.5 million in India, smoke tobacco. In either form, that is, they smoke as well as they consume orally. 28.6% of all adults use tobacco either in smoke or smokeless form. Now, what is the average monthly expenditure? You must have seen that ad of famous Bollywood actor Akshay Kumar, where he's basically asking his friend how much your cigarette costs, 10 rupees, and he's basically standing outside probably a primary healthcare, and his wife is suffering from problems related to menstruation, and then he tells him to, dude, it's better you buy a sanitary pad than to smoke because you have money to kill yourself, but you don't have money to basically save your wife from illness because of use of unhygienic clothes during her menstrual days, right? So that is the kind of message that they are trying to give out. So let us see what is the average monthly expenditure. In India, for a daily cigarette smoker, around 1100 rupees, and that for a daily BD smoker is estimated to be around 284 rupees. So you see, almost rupees 1100. It is an average. It can be high for some people, it can be low for some people, but 1100 rupees for smokes. Now some people might get happy that it is a very less amount, but please, you can use this amount for better things, right? Now, loose tobacco buyers. The survey also showed that 68% of smokers, 17% BD smokers, and 50% of smokeless tobacco users in India purchase loose tobacco buyers. So see, such surveys you can quote. See, now this is a non-controversial survey. It is not criticizing government blindly left, right and center. It is basically a social survey. So such a survey you can quote in your mains answer writing. So this is an important place to basically, quote figures, and you can give this out. There's no controversy about it, right? Now, as per Tobacco Free Union, over 1 million people die from tobacco related diseases in India every year. So that is also a very huge number. Now, effectiveness of bans. Now, is it really effective? The effectiveness of bans is not well known and depends on how widespread and stringent the implementation is. And in our country, this is a thing that if you ban something, then people start consuming it even more because it is banned. So this is really a twin-edged sword in India when it comes to banning things. According to 2017 study published in the Journal of Scientific Society, raising tax on tobacco products is one of the key ways of controlling tobacco consumption. Now, it says that, but I have seen through experience that whenever there are price rise in tobacco products, people usually, they don't cut back on their tobacco consumption, but they would cut back on other things because it is highly addictive. Now, while on one hand, making tobacco products dearer may lead to an overall decrease in consumption of tobacco globally, on the other hand, it can lead to an increase in the sale of loose cigarettes. So this is what the whole issue is. Now, the tobacco control in India. Now, this control is basically under international obligation and also our national laws. So what are the international conventions? We have basically signed the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which is known as the WHO FCTC. Now let us see what are the provisions of this FCTC. Now first, something about FCTC. It is the first international treaty negotiated under the auspices of WHO. It was adopted by the World Health Assembly. Basically, World Health Assembly is the highest decision-making body of WHO in 2003 and entered into force in 2005. India ratified it in 2004. Now, it was developed in response to the globalization of tobacco epidemic and is an evidence-based treaty that reaffirms the right of all people to the highest standard of health. Now, see, there has to be a balance. You want to consume something, okay, but you should have the full right to know all the harmful effects that it can cause to your health. Same should go for your junk food as well. And basically, government is trying to come up with guidelines where restaurants would have to mention how many calories, how many trans fats. As a matter of fact, if you consume chips and other junk foods, they have that profile. Now they're going to implement that for restaurants and eateries as well. Now let's see when that happens. Now, FCTC's measures to combat tobacco use include price and tax measures. That is, you increase the price and you increase the tax. For example, if you go abroad, especially in Europe, the price of cigarettes is very, very high. So if you're basically going somewhere or visiting a friend, the only request they would have for you is to buy a big packet of cigarettes from the duty-free area to basically get to them. That is the condition of the pricing in these European countries. Large graphic warnings on tobacco packages. We have implemented this, right? Keeping plain packaging to minimize the promotion of the products. I told you basically the lure and the attraction of the packaging and the whole product that they sell it like a lifestyle thing, right? That you are very cool, classy and macho if you're consuming cigarettes. 100% smoke free public spaces. So in India also there is a ban on smoking in public spaces, a ban on tobacco marketing. So yes, there is a ban on tobacco marketing as well, but they find there are other ways to basically push their product. Support for smokers who want to quit. So there are programs to basically support them, and prevention of tobacco industry interference. Now this is a very, very big thing, especially in countries like US where lobbying is accepted, and these big tobacco companies and especially Philip Morris, they're very, very powerful and they have a big say in policy. Now overtly their policy interference has been reduced. Covertly, I really can't comment. Now, let us look at COTPA, and it would be something on the lines of FCTC because we have signed FCTC. So COTPA 2003, it prohibits the smoking in public areas because FCTC says that. There is a prohibition of direct, indirect advertisement, sponsorship and promotion of tobacco products. Prohibition of sale of tobacco products to underage persons or minors. So that means under 18, if someone is selling tobacco product to such people, then they are liable for punishment. Manner and size in which warnings to be made. I have already told you 85% and more in India. Prohibition of sale of tobacco products close to educational institutions. So basically there is a 100-meter buffer that from any educational institution within 100-meter tobacco products should not be sold. Regulation of tar and nicotine contents of tobacco products. So there should be a limit on up to which tar and nicotine products could be added. Display of pictorial warnings on tobacco products and language in which specified warnings must be made. Now it should not be in Japanese or Korean or Chinese or Mandarin or some other language or Sanskrit. As a matter of fact, it should be in the languages that we all can understand. So basically if you see, it would be in Hindi and English, right? Now these are all the points that I have already told you. These are just the extended versions of them. So you can take a screenshot and read them. These are basically, I told you the summary, and these are the big elaborations of those points. COTPA amendment rules would basically deal with packaging and labeling. It was mandated that the specified health warning cover at least 85% of the principal display area of the packaging. Of this, 60% shall cover pictorial health warning and 25% shall cover textual health warning. This shall be positioned on the top edge of the packaging and at the same direction as the information on the principal display area. So basically 85% area is for warning, 60% for pictorial and 25% for textual. Now there's also a M cessation program, which is basically mobile based, SMS based program. It is an initiative using mobile technology for tobacco cessation. India launched M cessation using text messages in 2016 as part of the government's Digital India initiative. It uses two-way messaging between the individual seeking to quit tobacco use and program specialists providing the dynamic support. Because remember, under FCTC, we have to help the people who are basically looking to quit tobacco. So we have a program called M cessation, right? So this is all about the tobacco consumption and the programs that we have to basically counter it. So this topic is very, very important for your paper 3 again. It relates to public health and it's a very big issue. So please take screenshots and make your notes on this topic. Bharati Script. Now a very, very good initiative by a team of IIT Madras. Now they have basically developed it to be a common script which can express all the major Indian languages. If that happens, it would be a very good thing because I would be able to understand languages from South or the Northeast or the West, because unfortunately my vocabulary is limited to Hindi, English or my own home state language, right? So that basically what happens, it restricts us, right? So if such a thing we have, so at least if we have a common script, then you would be able to pronounce or get the words of other languages. For example, what you do in Google Translate, you put a word and then if you ask it to, pronounce it, it will pronounce it. So it uses a technology called transliteration. Basically transliteration, it focuses on producing your sound, right? How the word would sound. Like for example, there's a word in French, you don't know how to pronounce it, you just put it, and through transliteration the AI of Google will tell you how to pronounce it, right? So it makes that easy. So Bharati Script also uses that technology of transliteration. So we'll get to know about the Bharati Script, right? So let us see. It is a simple and unified script which can be used to write most major Indian languages, and it will be a boon because there are many languages which are on the verge of extinction and there are very less speakers of that language. So at least we can conserve such languages by using a common script, right? It would also help younger generations to basically understand languages, right? They don't need to use or they don't need to learn the language in its entirety. If they know the common script, they can basically grasp any language. So Bharati Script is designed to be a common script that can express all the major Indian languages. It is designed using simple shapes, often borrowing simple characteristics from various Indian languages, scripts and English. Now first of all, what is a script? Now script refers to a set of letters used for writing a particular language. For example, we use Devanagari for Hindi and also for Marathi, right? And Roman for English, German and so many other European languages, right? So script is basically a set of letters which basically express a language. Now which scripts are supported by Bharati? Like we said, the major scripts. So Hindi, Marathi, which use Devanagari. Tamil, Telugu, Gujarati, Punjabi, the script is called Gurmukhi. Bengali, Odia, Kannada and Malayalam. Now how does it work? It basically uses an OCR method, right? The team developed a method for reading documents in Bharati Script using a multilingual optical character recognition scheme or OCR scheme. Now basically what it would do, it would scan things in real time and it would produce the result. Let us see what is OCR. It also uses Bharati handwriting keyboard and Bharati transliterator. I gave you an introduction about the transliterator, right? Now what is optical character recognition? OCR is a system that provides a full alphanumeric recognition of printed or handwritten characters at electronic speed by simply scanning them. Now what is optical character recognition? OCR is a system that provides a full alphanumeric recognition of printed or handwritten characters at electronic speed by simply scanning the form. Now the Bharati would basically scan it and then translate it and tell you what it is saying. Now what is transliteration? Mind you, it is transliteration, not translation. Translation is to get you the meaning of something. Transliteration is basically helping you to pronounce words, right? Transliteration changes the letters from one alphabet or language into the corresponding similar sounding characters of another alphabet. Transliteration helps people pronounce words and names in foreign languages. Like I said, for example, what you use in your Google Translate or Google Speak, they basically you put anything and the Google AI engine would use that to produce a transliteration and produce a sound. Now, how does it do so? Transliteration focuses more on pronunciation than meaning, which is especially useful when discussing foreign people, places, and cultures. So, transliteration doesn't necessarily focus on meaning, which is the work of what? Translation, not transliteration. It only basically focuses on the pronouncement of words or the sounds that are produced. Now, what is the significance of Bharati? Now, it is a very significant thing. It will provide a common script for the entire country and is hoped to bring down many communication barriers in India, right? Because, for example, somebody speaks Telugu and somebody speaks Hindi. Now the Telugu person writes in Bharati script and the Hindi speaking person also writes in Bharati script. Now both would be able to understand what the other person is saying because the script is similar, right? It is the common script and they would be able to get the sound, right? It can help the next generation of Indians to easily read in Indian languages. It can serve as a writing system for innumerable tribal languages of India and languages of Northeast. It is an ideal script for languages like Konkani or Tulu that do not have their own script. So important, languages like Konkani and Tulu, they don't have their own script. So this Bharati can help them. It can act as a link script for migrant Indians who move out of their native state for work. And it can also connect millions of NRI children back to Indian literature. For example, Panchatantra, if you get to read it in original Sanskrit, imagine. Or like Sangam literature in Tamil, right? Such a great piece of literary work, right? But unfortunately, most of the people do not understand Tamil. You'd have to understand the whole Tamil on that too, I think, in its pristine form to understand the Sangam literature. But if Bharati app can help you, then it would be a great thing, right? It can shorten the duration of adult literacy programs from 6 months to a few weeks as the script is easy to learn. Increase accessibility. Using finger spelling method, it can be used to generate sign language for hearing impaired persons. So it can also basically address the accessibility issues for differently abled people. So using finger spelling method, it can generate a sign language for hearing impaired. And it can also lead to new system of Braille for Indian languages. It would be a very great thing. Now this app is developed by a team led by Srinivasa Chakravarti at IIT Madras. So very, very good thing, Bharati script. Promoting women in science, new science and technology policy 2020. So the last science and technology policy came out in 2013. Now a new policy is coming out and it has a major focus on promoting women in science. So how it will do so? Let us see. We'll also get to know the status of women in science currently in India and what policy measures or initiatives have been taken to increase their valuable contribution towards science in India. So let us see what this article is saying. So in order to create women leaders, Department of Science and Technology is developing a framework to rate and rank science institutes depending on the proportion of women employed. And this would be a part of the new science and technology policy. The initiative under the new science and technology policy 2020 will cover government and private institutes. So they'll basically see how many women are employed and they'll also see how many women are employed at senior levels. They will be rated on a number of parameters that includes promotion opportunities, leadership positions and support structure such as creches. And the committees looking at women's issues, including that of sexual harassment complaints, will also be strengthened. So these are all to ensure a safe and progressive workplace for women in the field of science. Now there is a push towards inclusivity, equity and diversity. The framework will also look at how to create interventions that will help female and entrepreneurs as well as other communities that are cut off from science due to geographical and regional reasons as well as that of privilege. Despite women proving themselves time and again, like in every field, there is still a patriarchal mindset when it comes to the field of science, right? So And then there is a problem in the attitude of family members as well, because once you pursue science, it takes a very, very long time. And family members, they are basically in a hurry to get girls married off, and the society we live in, that by a certain age you should be married and whatnot. So it basically what happens, it crushes the career aspirations of hopes of so many young and bright women. So this framework will look at how to create successful interventions that will help women overcome such challenges. Now, Women in Science in India, a task force on women in science set up by the government in 2005, had found that there has been a growth in enrollment of women at a university level from 10.9% in 1951 to 39.4% in 2001. So there is a higher enrollment, but the problem is that there is regional disparity, plus at the higher levels, at the research level or at the teaching position or higher teaching position, the number becomes low. And also in leading premier institutions like IITs, the number of women students is low. However, it also found marked regional differences. The situations in IITs is particularly dismal, and there was a drastic drop in women from the doctoral level to that of scientist or faculty, indicating bottlenecks at the employment stage. So many women, they don't get employment, or because the employment conditions are that hard that they don't really take up an employment in this field, or maybe there are gender prejudices that don't really let them join proper jobs. The number of women scientists occupying faculty positions in research institutions and prestigious universities was less than 15%. So this was based on a survey of 2005, but it is still relevant and the numbers are abysmally low. So that is why we need to make successful interventions to promote more and more women into the field of science. Now, what initiatives have been undertaken to promote women in science? The Department of Science and Technology over the years introduced various initiatives to encourage women in science, such as Kiran for scientists to build their career paths. So Kiran scheme basically helps scientists to build or grow their career path. Now you should go and check these schemes in detail. You should also do some research. So this is kind of your homework, that the schemes that I'm naming, you should go and you should search about them. So Kiran for scientists to build their career paths. Vigyan Jyoti encourages girls to choose STEM careers, that is science, technology, engineering, mathematics careers, and bring more of them into IITs, NITs and IISERs. The Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti is running this program, in which 2500 of top performing class 11 students have been chosen from 50 districts. Now this will be basically expanded and scaled up to 50,000 top high school students from across all boards. Now these girl students would also be introduced to some leading scientists and women who are excelling in the field of STEM, to basically promote them to take STEM as a major career choice. So this is all about this. ESG fund. So basically these funds are getting popular these days, and UPSC has a tendency of asking such questions. For example, I think in 2015 or 16 they asked about masala bonds, right? So they could be asking such questions in your prelims as well. So we'll have a quick look at what is ESG fund. Now basically ESG stands for environment, social and governance. So it is like a mutual fund, right? Like a mutual fund, what a fund manager does, he basically pools resources from different people, he makes a fund, and then he basically invests the resource pool that he has collected into different portfolios, and then he generates a return for those investors, right? Now under ESG, the portfolio manager or the fund manager, he would be basically investing in projects that basically comply to environmental standards, or they are socially sensitive, or they are for good governance. And why? Because people are getting more and more aware about the power of finance. So they basically want to invest in companies or in sectors which are basically catering to these things. So let us see. So ESG is a combination of three words, that is environment, social and governance. It is a kind of mutual fund. Its investing is used synonymously with sustainable investing or socially responsible investing. Now typically a mutual fund basically looks for good stock of a company. that has potential of earning management quality, cash flows, etc. Right? But for the ESG fund, the fund manager, he basically shortlists companies that score high on environmental, social responsibility and corporate governance, and then looks into financial factors. So here the major factors determining the investment decision are the environment, right? Social responsibility and corporate governance, and financial factors or profitability is the second factor, or it basically takes a backseat. Therefore, the key difference between the ESG fund and other funds is conscious, right? Or conscience. That is, ESG fund focuses on companies with environment friendly practices, ethical business practices, and an employee friendly record. Now, this fund, ESG fund, is also regulated by SEBI. So you must also remember, because SEBI is the market regulator in India. Now, why are they popular? See, modern people, they are aware about the environmental factors. Now they understand that there is only so little that they can do on an individual basis. So with their money, they are using their money innovatively and consciously to invest in basically such things which are good for the planet. Thus, investors have started incorporating ESG factors into investment practices. The United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, UNPRI, an international organization, works to promote the incorporation of environmental, social, and corporate governance factors into investment decision making. So there's also a UN organization which is basically working for ESG funds. Now, what could be the potential impact? As they gain momentum in India, companies will be forced to follow better governance, ethical practices, and environment-friendly measures and social responsibility. Companies that do not follow sustainable business models will find it tough to raise both equity and debt. So this will also induce companies to go for green initiatives, better corporate governance, right? And investing in social sectors. Globally, investors like pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, etc. don't invest in companies that are seen as polluting, don't follow social responsibility, or are tobacco companies. And just now we did something about tobacco, right? Now the global tobacco industry profits per year close to US $35 billion. However, it causes nearly 6 million annual deaths, and investors are growing sensitive to such reality. So basically they want to make conscious decisions when it comes to investing their money, and they want to promote companies which are basically working in the field of environment, or they're working for social betterment, or they have good corporate practices and they treat their employees better. So this is all about the ESG funds. Apple vendors to invest in India. Now this is important. Why? Because number one, FDI is coming into India. Yes. Number two, in this I will tell you about the PLI scheme. And number three, like I've been telling you, that India is trying to increase its ease of doing business, because many companies are trying to exit from China in the light of this corona pandemic and China's role in it. So three of the Apple's biggest vendors are looking to invest in India. They're basically trying to shift out of China. So the biggest one is Foxconn, then Winstron, and then Pegatron. Collectively, they are looking to invest around $900 million into Indian economy. Now, this investment in itself good enough. Plus, once they set up shop in India, it will also attract other industries to India. And with these industry, they will also promote opening up of many feeder industries to these in India. It will help industrialization of India in a big way, especially in the electronics field. So it is a very, very important thing. For some people, 900 million investment might not mean much, but it can have a long-term impact symbolically for Indian economy, because it will signal that it is okay or it is good to conduct business in India, and other big contractors would also be shifting to India. So let us quickly see what this article is saying. Three of Apple Inc.'s top contract manufacturers, Foxconn, Winstron, and Pegatron, plan to invest a total of almost 900 million in India in the next 5 years to tap into a new production linked incentive scheme, or the PLI scheme. Now basically PLI scheme is offering incentives worth $6.5 billion to mobile manufacturers in India over the period of next 5 years. So what is the production linked incentive scheme? It is a 6.5 billion scheme offering firms cash incentives on any increase in sales of locally made smartphones. So we can expect that Apple would be producing more and more phones in India. After Apple, there would be many other manufacturers that would be shifting base to India. So it has dual impact. Number one, for the economy, and I've told you the multiplier effect, that these big companies would also promote smaller companies, the feeder industries or the ancillary industries, right? Number two, security concerns. Because now throughout the world, there are concerns that the mobiles or the gadgets that are produced in China could be used to spy on other people. So those risks or those dangers are also very, very real. It's not a sci-fi movie anymore, because China under President Xi is capable of doing anything crazy. Your craziest idea, and China might be implementing that already. So it will also help to dissuade such things. And yes, there is a very big anti-China sentiment in India, and it should be. So if this happens, India could become a very big mobile manufacturing hub, right? And India is also a very, very big market. So all the more reasons for big players to come to India. The scheme aims to make India an export manufacturing hub. Foxconn has applied for 4,000 crore and Winston and Pegatron for 1,200 and 1,300 crore under this scheme. So again, a very, very good news for Indian economy, both in the short term and in the long term. That is why I have covered this here. So folks, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we post. Also, please press the like button if you like our videos. And please connect with us on our Instagram page, UPSC for Everyone. So see you next time. Till then, stay safe, stay happy, and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.